Tonight's Modern Men is powered by the Hero Initiative. Interested in becoming a hero? Go to heroinitiative.org to see how you can become a hero to those comic creators in need. And also, don't forget to visit Mainframe Comic Con for information on how you can join in on the Mainframe Comic Con fun. That's April 25th and 26th here on the Comic Core channel. And welcome to Modern Men episode 28. Man, so happy this is finally here. Been dying to talk about Dark Knight Returns. So tonight, we're going to dedicate a whole hour to Dark Knight Returns, the importance of it, basically what it means to us and what it means to the comic medium in general. But man, I can't not admire the beard down there. Andy, how is the beard doing today? The majesticism of this beard. Wow. My God.
Dare I say this beard is sublime today.
Curling up a little bit right there on the end, huh? Yeah, right
Just
there.
a bit.
Start using conditioner, huh? Look at that. Anyway, we got JB from Discovery Bay down there.
Yes, yes. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, man. You know, things have been wonderful. Really busy over here at the house with homeschooling, but we're still here, hanging in.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to see you're happy and healthy, man. And then the seating arrangements are all messed up, guys. Drew's on top tonight. What's going on with that?
That's all right.
I feel like I live on top.
He's
Carson.
putting in the work. Drew's putting in the work.
Yeah,
that
that's
daily
true.
show, he deserves that position up there on the top row. Good stuff, Drew.
I don't know anything about that.
But yeah, Drew, you've been killing it on the morning show. Definitely, guys, check that out if you haven't had the chance. But tonight, like I said, we're going to dedicate the whole hour to Dark Knight Returns. But probably about halfway point, we're going to break down each issue here. But once we get to that halfway point, I want you guys to stay tuned for the scoop on what's going on with the Hero Initiative and who you guys have the opportunity to have basically like 4-on-1 meetings with from the comic creator world, because we got some big ones to talk about this week. So you got a chance to donate to the Hero Initiative and maybe get a chance to meet one of your all-time favorite creators. So stay tuned for the scoop on that. And not only is the Dark Knight going to return tonight, the Randomizer is going to return at the end of tonight's show. Okay. So I put the rules kind of down below. Everybody can pick as many books as they want, but I'm only going to put them in the Randomizer once. Unless someone does a super chat, and for every dollar of that super chat with that suggestion, I will put in that suggestion once for every dollar. So, for instance, if someone wants V for Vendetta, I'll put V for Vendetta in, but if there's a $10 super chat associated with
10
Vendetta,
times.
it'll go in 10 times. Actually, I'll put it in 11 times because I'll give you a free pick. You get a free pick.
Wow.
$10 gives you 10 picks. So think about the reads you want to do now.
All right.
Show. Once we're talking about Dark Knight, we'll start
strategery.
tallying things up. Don't put them in just yet because I'll lose track, and I don't want to lose track. So start thinking about the reads you want us to look at for week 29 of Modern Men, and we'll get those put in a randomizer. And then before we keep going, we do have a poll winner from last week because, hey, they couldn't pick the book. So they picked the topic for next week. And it looks like we're going to be talking about best books we have never read. So there's some confusion in the comments on this. So these are like hyped up big time books.
Let's see.
We all have that list of books that, you know, they're on top 10 lists and such everywhere. But for whatever reason, like I haven't read them, or Drew will probably have a different one, JB, so on and so forth. So that's what it looks like. Well, I'm kind of surprised books everyone liked, but we didn't kind of win. There was an early surge for that, but then it finished tied for last. So, it was just kind of an experimental thing that I tried out, and we still had 44 people show up and vote, so big thanks for that.
That's a big turnout, man.
Yeah, it's a little bit about what we normally do.
Yeah.
Nice.
So before we get in, we haven't gotten to the chat yet, so we got to get into the chat.
Bad chat.
See who's awake out there. First, as usual, man, bad news, Chris Barrett. He says, bad news, Barrett has arrived.
There you
go. Brady's got some bad news. Nice to see you, Chris. And then my first subscriber ever, one of my favorites, Fish Tropic. How you doing, Fish? Nice to see you in the chat tonight. We got Scott Evans. How you doing, Scott? He's back almost every single week. We appreciate you following the show live each and every Monday at 10 p.m. Eastern. Thank you so much for joining us, Scott. And then Downright Nerdy Podcast. This guy has been a huge supporter of our show on his YouTube, on his Instagram. So definitely follow Downright Nerdy Podcast. He has one of the coolest podcasts I've watched. I actually sat down and watched the whole thing yesterday as it premiered on YouTube. So definitely gets my pick for a must-listen podcast. So definitely check him out. We got Gomer in the chat. What is going on, man? I know, Drew, that's one of your favorites.
What's up, Gomer? Everybody loves Gomer. Gomer's great.
Yeah.
How you doing on this fine holiday, Gomer?
ComicManAndy, JB, and guess who's in the chat? The Great Legend Show, youtube.com/r-95 is in the chat.
One of the best.
I'll try to sneak
One
in
of the best
for you tonight. All right. So without further ado, we're talking Dark Knight Returns.
Nice.
So before we get into the issue-to-issue breakdown, I kind of want to go down the panel and just to get your guys' reactions to like Dark Knight Returns, basically. Or I guess more of like, what does this book mean to you? So before we sat down and read it for this review, Drew, I'll go ahead and start with you. See, there's one for you, Legend. What was the impact this book had on your life before we decided to review it, Drew?
I like this story. It's probably my favorite Frank Miller thing that he's ever done. I don't think it's super groundbreaking because I read it after I read a bunch of Batman that came after it. So I can't really see it for what it was as far as the introduction of a new type of Batman. That's just personally, I didn't get to the point where it was the first for me. It was like the 30th intense Batman story that I read, so it didn't really do anything for me in that right. But I think that as like an alternate universe, I like the playground here, and I for one didn't care for the second version of this story, but the Master Race, which came out like 6 years ago or something at this point, I really enjoyed that and what they did with that story there. So I like the universe, and it's cool to see it continue. But yeah, just I love it as a Frank Miller book.
Okay, very nice. I was going to say, you guys can just tell me no if you want. JB, did you have any? Did this story have any impact, or did you have any recollection of it at all before we decided to read it this week?
I had never read it. I had never read it before. I know, I'd seen the movies. I knew that there was a, different iteration. And I have to explain that to people, oh, what do you mean it's the Dark Knight? Yeah, it's somebody else's telling of the story, okay? There's different interpretations of the story. I knew there was this story out there. I'd never read it. I loved it. I loved what they did with it, and I'm sure we'll get back to that when we get into the issue by issue, especially how the media plays, especially today in today's age, how the media plays and how important it is. When was this written? Think about how telling that was, and how it's only gotten worse, how important the media is and what happens.
Yeah, that's a good point, JB, with the whole thing with the media, because there's a part, well, we'll get into it later.
Yeah, we'll get into
definitely a part where they're just like, you see one thing happen on the page, and then you see the media reactions. That's like, well, that's not what happened. But after a while, you might not catch that the first read, but eventually you're just like, wow, he really got his point across there. But Andy, what about you, man?
No. So this I knew it existed. I've known of it. I've seen it on lists, but I've never read it before. And this is actually the first full Batman read I've ever done. So you guys broke my Batman cherry tonight.
Oh, that's crazy, man. I didn't realize you hadn't read too much Batman. So
none. Zip.
So you're kind of like me, basically. So what this story means to me, basically, or my history with it. I've told the story a trillion times. I broke into comics Superman 75, ran into Superman, all that fun stuff. But really at the time when I started collecting and getting interested in comics, Batman was going through Nightfall, because that was, Superman went through his thing. Then they tried the same thing with Batman, basically replacing him for 6 months and bringing him back. So Batman in the comics, when I first started collecting, wasn't the most fun thing to get into, to be honest. I wasn't a huge Azrael fan. I know he has his big-time fans out there, but I wasn't one of them. So I really didn't have that outlet to go on and read Batman for a very long time. On top of that, I was collecting Wizard magazines, of course, from grocery stores when I was a kid. And it seems like once an issue or anytime there was like a best of list they would post in this magazine, Dark Knight Returns would always be very high up on these lists. I'm like, what is Dark Knight Returns? This seems really interesting. You go to the price guide, it says like, Death of Joker and all that stuff. I'm just like, wait, they kill the Joker in this thing? Now I got to go find this. So eventually, like, I think as a Christmas present, my brother just bought me all 4 of the issues, which I still have up taped on my wall up there.
Ooh.
And I was pretty blown away by it. I didn't understand some of the themes maybe as well as I should have, as probably like a 10 or 12-year-old whenever I end up reading that. But honestly, that was one of my first big Batman reads I sat down and read start to finish too, Andy. Because, like I said, I didn't get into the Nightfall stuff big time. The Bane book at the time was near impossible to find because it was, one of those speculator-heavy books in the 90s because Batman got his back broken. So that was my first big foray into Batman as well. It just took place like 20-plus years ago. So anyway, let's go to the chat one more time. Then we're going to hop into issue number 1. We got oh, my God.
Oh,
he's not under there, but we got Perry in the chat. And look at this. Downright nerdy podcast, man. $10 super chat. That's going right to the Hero Initiative. So big thanks, DNP. He says, Andy has a great movie recommendation for you. Thanks for keeping us entertained, fellas. Go subscribe to Comics of the Atom. Andy's plugging my new podcast, man. This guy is just too much. It says Modern Family. So, yeah, Comics of the Atom. It just hit iTunes late last week. That is the new podcast featuring myself and my friend Mike Green. We are reviewing Astonishing X-Men start to finish. We started with the first 6 issues last week, and we did the next 6 issues, well, right before this show, basically. So big, huge thanks to DNP for the $10 super chat, man. That is phenomenal. We got Great Legend saying, same order around my peak in collecting when I was in junior high. Nightfall, I could never get into. Yeah, likewise, man. We got Phil Ailing in the chat. What is going on, Phil? Nice to see you in here tonight. We got Thunder House Design. I think he had a pretty good quote earlier. He says, hey, y'all, Strikes Again is hurt by I just discovered Photoshop coloring. I actually 100% agree with that. The story has some interesting insights into the times, but I agree with Drew. Master Race was better. So
I agree with you as well.
William Bird. He says, my first exposure to DC Comics after only buying Marvel my first few years of comic reading. This, Watchmen, Ronin, Camelot 3000. DC really impressed me with more mature titles coming out of the mid-'80s. Yeah, absolutely. So some great quotes from the chat there. But let's go ahead and get in to The Dark Knight Returns. So the first, I guess before we get going, what did you guys think of like the 4 volumes, basically, how they each had like their own individual name? Did you guys even catch that?
No, I didn't even catch that. Reading it on Comixology.
Read it on Comixology. Yeah.
I'm sitting there. It wasn't until I skimmed through it for the second time after I finished my first read that I saw that there were covers there with titles, because some of the titles were actually pretty small and off to the side.
Yeah. So the first one is the official one called Dark Knight Returns. So the first story, of course, as we read, he kind of starts off with this car race. And there's this crazy old man getting ready to wreck his car, and his name's Bruce Wayne.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of get right off the bat. You see he's older. You see he's a little bit crazier right out the gate. What were you guys' initial impressions of Bruce Wayne in this? Andy, I'll go ahead and start with you because you're laughing.
Tom Selleck, for the love of God.
With the mustache.
Tom Selleck playing Bruce Wayne.
Right?
I couldn't get that out of my head. It took me at least halfway into the second book before I can get that out of my head. Being a first-time Batman reader, I wouldn't really suggest this. I would try to get some more history and information first before delving into this, because the first book was kind of lost on me. I'm going to leave it at that. The first book was a little lost on me. I had to go back and skim through it again.
I like in that panel that you showed, it was the first of the recurring theme of the honorable way to die.
Mm-hmm.
Because this comes up over and over again, that this would be this would be an honorable way to die, right? In this wreck, which he doesn't, wreck obviously, but I thought it was a great start to hey, what's going on with this guy? He's older, but he's still pushing the line. He's looking for the thrill that he hasn't had. What's going on here? I liked it.
All the big villains are put away.
Yeah.
All the bad battles are behind him, and now the only way he can get his jollies is by being in a Formula One race.
Yeah,
You know,
that's his
you can't be
adrenaline.
Batman anymore. You might as well put your life on the line in one way or another. And I think that he's the kind of guy who's got nothing left to live for, so he's got nothing left to lose.
Yeah, I was kind of the same way. It seems like he's just wanting to seek cheap thrills at this point, whether it cost him his life or not. I kind of had this theme throughout the first issue, especially like, is he just putting on the cape and cowl again to have this honorable death? Does he have this
Honorable
death wish going through the first couple of issues that he doesn't want to just be this old man rotting in his mansion next to another old man who served him his whole life? And he's heavily drinking too, basically. He immediately has this meeting with Jim Gordon, and you see this very uncharacteristic Bruce Wayne where he's just slamming stiff drinks with his commissioner buddy. So what did you guys think of Commissioner Gordon's role in this first issue?
I like Gordon is he's done. He's near retirement. He's seen it all. He's just gritty, dirty, and kind of done with it. I like the one comment when you were talking about the drinking where Alfred's like, "Oh, I guess there's not going to be a wine cellar for the rest of the family." But wait a minute, there's going to be a rest of the family because you ain't dating anyway. You know, this is, drink it all anyway.
Andy,
yeah, tired. Done, ready to give in, ready to give up. He cuts some corners here and there, and when he gets that opportunity to retire, he doesn't give in. He doesn't give up. He does it.
Drew, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I just I love the way that this story and Miller's other great Batman work, year one, both have really informed the different movie iterations that we've seen of Batman, especially the Nolan verse. You see a lot of this in Bruce Wayne at the beginning of Dark Knight Rises, where he's kind of like broken down and done, and doesn't want to have anything to do with it. You see a lot of it in the way that Alfred talks to him in that movie, and there's so much that's paralleled in both stories in like that Nolan trilogy, especially year one does a lot more of the buildup for Batman Begins, but there's notes of Dark Knight throughout both the Dark Knight movie and the Dark Knight Rises as well.
Also in this early on, you start to see that, Bruce starts to think of Batman as like a different person. Like there's this split personality kind of, when he refers to himself as Batman, that there's this split. And I like how it starts. Now, what is it that gets him back? This is right in my wheelhouse of time slot when he talked about he's sitting there late, he's been drinking, and the movie Zorro comes on. He's like, no, I thought I programmed this to not come on. I can't have this come on. I can't watch this. And sure enough, that's what, part of what inspires, this, let me get back out there. And also the heat, the way that they played the weather in this, where this big heat storm is getting all of these people all upset in this funky, what are they calling them? The mutants
gang.
They're talking a bunch of smack early on, and the heat's getting everybody. And here comes this cooling, and here's going to be this big storm is coming in, and it sets up perfect for this kind of return. And then how the media portrays it, is this a real return? I don't know. I took some of the clips of they were being described as Dracula. It was. I really love the interaction of how the story is told through the different snippets of media, for sure.
Yeah. It was basically like he was being introduced again for the first time.
Yeah,
like they didn't know how to interpret it. None of the media outlets wanted to come straight
even
up
said
like,
people in high school. Some of the kids in high school don't even think he's it's all fake.
Yeah.
It was a legend, that it wasn't real. Because 10 years is a long time. For people to not have seen him or heard from him.
Yeah, and the other kind of main development that happens here before he even becomes Batman again is you're introduced to Harvey Dent, who is finally, after all these years, been basically cured, according to his doctors, of his disease that was Two-Face, basically. So they healed his face. He's gone through a lot of, therapy as well, both physically and emotionally. But of course, as we know, typically with Batman villains, it's not going to last long. So basically, he's your main antagonist for book 1. So you kind of get to see him come out of this hospital, which, by the way, this shrink they have at this hospital has got to be the worst shrink ever, like by far. Like he lets Two-Face out of the Arkham Asylum, and then later the stuff with the Joker we'll get into in a little while. But yes, the second Two-Face is released, he bandages up his face, steals 2 helicopters, 2 bombs, and he basically threatens terror on Gotham, of course. So what did you guys think about making... Would you guys, if you were kind of crafting this tale, would you guys have let off with Two-Face or came out with another villain or just scrapped the villain for the first book altogether?
I like the way they use Two-Face. I think that it's kind of the perfect reintroduction to what Batman is. Two-Face is kind of a campy villain, but he's got a set of rules that he plays by. They adhere to that very well in this story. And the twist with Two-Face in the end is really great. But it also, he's a personal villain for Bruce. He was a friend. He was someone he let down, and is the perfect kind of character to bring him back to being Batman.
Nice. JB?
I think that in my interpretation of this first book, Two-Face is kind of like the villain maybe in the background, because they're really talking about this mutant group that's going to take over. This is some of the stuff that comes out of that guy's mouth is kind of ridiculous. What he's going to do to Gordon and his family, and is going to step in his blood and all kinds of craziness. In the background, they're percolating the story of Two-Face because he's rehabilitated. Yeah, right. But at least he's had the surgery where he doesn't look like all crazy, but maybe that's revealed that he does look all crazy at the end. I don't know. I'm confused about how that turned out when that reveal kind of happens, how his face turned out. I thought it was cool. I don't know if I really would have let off with him. I don't even think he needed his introduction in this first book the way that, I don't think Two-Face is what gets him back into it. There's so many things going on with the heat of Gotham and what's going on, and everything is just pointless. It's so festering in Gotham that it sparks him to do something, and I think that was really what brought him back.
Andy?
I don't think they actually let off with Two-Face. Hear me out for a moment. As a first reader, I see book 1 very differently, I think, than some other people in the moment or at this moment. I think they let off with the villain, the first villain, being addiction.
Ooh.
If I'm understanding this correctly,
you go.
Bruce Wayne falls through a hole into a well or into a cavern and gets hurt and then gets scared by the bats in the caves, right? Am I understanding that panel correctly? Is that like an
absolutely, yeah?
Kind of reliving that moment as a child, right? When he was running after the rabbit.
Your body responds with a flood of dopamine and adrenaline in a moment like that. And now going through the rest of the book and the rest of the books as we follow along, he's constantly fighting that addiction to adrenaline, in my opinion, or dopamine, where he's constantly, like JB, you talk about how he's like it's a glorious time to die. At least once a book, I think we see something.
He says that line and
then at least I think once a book we see something where he's getting gravely injured to the
on the verge of blackout. Don't pass out. Yeah. Don't black out.
That's a form of addiction. Veterans, combat veterans, people that have had severe injuries or loss of limbs, they'll tell you that instance in that moment that happened, recreating that is it's a form of a drug, what the body does to protect itself. So I think the first villain in the very beginning was his form of addiction to that adrenaline or that dopamine in that moment, that fight or flight. You know what I mean? If that makes any sense. I actually think Two-Face is the second villain. Two-Face, second villain. I don't know. That's deep cut. Might be carrying it way too far, but that's kind of what I got out of it in the first book.
No, that's a very fair point, Andy, because once you take your the way you interpret it and actually even apply it to Two-Face, they suffer from the same enemy basically, because once they start just finally settling down and talking, once they have their big scuffle, you kind of see that Two-Face suffers from the exact same problem, where when he looks in the mirror, he doesn't see this healed up face. He sees a burnt, severely scarred face with a monster associated with it that he's become over the years. Whereas Batman, when he's in deep thought, few drinks in him, he's just picturing that bat flying through his window, fueling him to either sacrifice himself for the greater good, but it's his muse to go fight crime basically, and he has to do it for whatever reason. He can't say no to it.
Both cases, it's compulsive behavior, and with Batman, it's he needs to feel death on his. He needs to feel death's breath on the back of his neck in order to know that he's still alive. And for him, this whole Harvey situation also lets him know that he's got unfinished business and that he can put the cowl back on. He can be Batman again. I really dug it.
Nice. Before we keep going into this deep dive of the first issue, I need to get to the chat because there's a couple really awesome comments. So Thunderhouse Design says, I'm going to age myself, but DKR issue 4 was what made me a collector. I was 14 at the mall. My friends saw that cover in Walden Books. It was like, that's what comics are now. So that's an awesome story, Thunderhouse. Thank you for that. But Gore Vidal has dropped some really good quips and knowledge in the chat, of course. He says, primary comic audience at the time were teens, but the material dealt with adult themes, which Miller had already done with Daredevil. The Independents and Europeans had been doing it for years. Dark Knight Returns reached a huge audience because it was Batman, a character everyone knows, and it fundamentally changed how future writers would write mainstream characters. Yeah, that's 100% true. I definitely could not have said it better myself. So, and by the way, let's welcome Boy Who Had 7. Welcome to the chat, sir. Rob Boswell and Bear Island. He says, is this not live? We're live, pal.
We're live.
We're live.
Definitely live. So, I want to shout out Rob Boswell for the t-shirt. Thanks. Nice. My daughters love it. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And then I have to ask specifically, Andy, how tragic was the scene where Bruce Wayne's going up the steps talking to Alfred, and Alfred all of a sudden is like, well, so what happened to your mustache? Like, isn't it like nightmare? You wake up and have no facial hair, Andy?
That is nightmare material. It definitely is.
That's funny. You remember that one? That's good.
I definitely had to ask Andy on that. So, kind of just to put a bow on it. Well, I guess we haven't talked about Carrie Kelly. We got to talk about Carrie Kelly first. So, to kind of go back to the point that Gore Vidal made, he said that initially Batman was oriented toward younger readers, and to kind of keep those in with all these adult themes, you kind of got to have that Robin. So they took a wild swing at Robin in this one. It was kind of like the first time. And it's something they kind of do a lot now. They take a character and they pretty much give you a newer, more diverse version of it. So you get Carrie Kelly, who's a female teenager as your Robin this time instead of like a Dick Grayson. Or at the time in the comics, it would have been Jason Todd. So what were you guys' initial reactions to seeing Carrie Kelly here?
First reaction is, I had no idea this was coming, to be honest with you. So when you're reading this and Comixology panel to panel, you're like, what the hell is this? And after you get into it, and especially when he accepts her, and you've got Alfred going, sir, the girl, sir, you start to go, you know what? I see what he's doing here. How he cleverly uses her to set them up for that final fight at getting her. This is really well done. I only got to read the first 2 books. I don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 books to this character, so I'm really looking forward to see how it plays out in book 3 and 4.
What about you, Andy?
I really didn't have much of a reaction except for boy, those glasses look 80s terrible.
Yeah.
Like I said, this being my first introduction to Batman, it's also my first introduction to Robin really in a series. So this person kind of didn't, I really don't know how to put it really into words. It's just the person appeared and said, oh, okay. And I just kept reading the story.
True.
I love Carrie Kelly throughout I didn't care for her that much in this first issue, but I love her throughout everything they've done with the character ever since she appeared in this issue. She grows on you quite quickly. I think that she fills the role quite well, and I'm just a little upset that Zack Snyder kind of screwed the pooch on doing a live action version of this movie, because I think Carrie Kelly would be a fantastic character, entry like level character for people to get into. I think that that's a casting. If I had to, Zack Snyder's designs for a movie, I definitely would have done this story and had Carrie Kelly in it. I think that would work. That would work perfectly as far as telling a cinematic story. She's a great entry level character. It's exactly what Robin needs to be. Like I said, first off, I was not a fan of her or her design.
Yeah.
When you say design, that's the one thing I don't think that for this book, the way it's drawn and the grittiness and the darkness of it, the Robin costume felt out of place a little bit. You know,
I think that the Robin costume works when you finally get it.
I didn't like when she's first introduced in his first two books. I'm like, man, that just costume seems like crazy.
The short hair, the big glasses, yeah. Like I just didn't. Nothing about that. I think that was very, very much a product of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, she's almost the main reason to keep up with the Dark Knight universe. I'm a pretty big fan of Carrie Kelly. I'm still shocked to this day DC hasn't tried to further integrate this character into the main continuity.
I love her as Batman, though, in the Master Race.
Yeah.
She's just like wearing a purple bat suit. And people are like, what's that? It's like, it's Batman. No, that can't be Batman. I don't know. I like her a lot as she's grown through the universe. I dig it.
Yeah, but at least in this first volume, she's a good character to have there just to kind of be like the every person, basically, because she has no idea who or what a Batman is. She's too young to kind of remember when he was in his prime. So you get to see her reactions with the news and stuff and how she really is influenced by Batman. Obviously, she immediately goes out. Once she's saved from the mutant or two, she's, cornered into by Batman. She goes and buys a Batman suit, and immediately she's captivated by it, like the other Robins of, like Tim Drake and Jason Todd were. Basically, they were heavily influenced by Batman. But eventually, going into the second issue, I think you really get to see why Robin is important to Batman, and she's going to stand out. And honestly, I think she absolutely should. So before we go on to issue 2, any final thoughts on the first issue, or you guys want to keep going?
No, let's
keep rolling.
We're a half an hour in.
I know. We got to get to 2.
Yeah, like I said, that's why I dedicate. You're like, what's the topic for tonight? It's like Dark Knight Returns. It's Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah,
like,
it's gonna
we don't have a topic. We don't need a topic when it's Dark Knight Returns.
That's
so
true.
We're going in to part 2. Dark Knight Triumphant is your second book. So in this one, I feel like this is the one where you kind of get almost to the meat and potatoes of Batman being important to Gotham. It's just him, like, he sees a problem and he isolates like every part of that problem and he takes them out one by one. So I think this used to be kind of almost my least favorite volume.
Really?
Because it's like in the next 2, you deal with the Joker, you deal with Superman and what's going on with the United States and the Cold War at the time and that stuff. And the first issue is your main building block to establish your universe. And then you kind of have the second one here. But on my reread this time, I'm like, man, this is almost maybe my new favorite one, to be honest, because it's the most, in my opinion, it's the most Batman style story, basically. So you have the mutants, which is the biggest problem in Gotham right now. He's already dealt with the Two-Face problem. That's all out of the way. He's kind of almost just being back to full swing Batman. But yeah, the first thing he wants to find out, or one of the first things he wants to find out, is these mutants have a lot of firepower. Where is this coming from? So once he starts dealing with some of like the street level type stuff, just your random bad guys kidnapping people, you start to see some of those news reports come in saying that people have been rescued and the people kidnapped them are very beat up by a Batman or something. The media is finally catching on. You see the debates with Lana Lang, who's put on some pounds because she's gotten older, and this other debater. But then you start to see him like go after this one mutant, and he takes him up on the cliff and interrogates him and tries to figure out where these weapons are coming from. So he figures out they're coming from this army general who is he's fed up with the way he's been treated. His wife is suffering from a disease that they're not helping pay for. And that I just like seeing Batman do that detective work. So, Drew, what were your initial first impressions of the second issue here?
I love the action in this issue.
Yeah.
I love how brutal the fight scenes are.
Mhm.
I think that it just really ramps it up to another level. This has always been my favorite issue of this series. I think that you hit the nail on the head. It's the most Batman of the issues. I like the setup of the world in one. And there's nothing wrong with the second half of the whole deal. But I think that the way that the first kind of chapter ends is just really perfect. And it shows Batman from his lows to his highs.
Absolutely. JB?
I agree with this was my favorite. I've only read the first two, but I was in the groove when I hit this. I was sending you guys photos out of this one. The dialogue of Batman, some of his best lines ever, Batman lines came out of this episode right here, or this issue. And that panel, I mean, I actually had to tell my mother-in-law who's been staying with me when I read that it's one panel. It's not one panel, it's one page. The lady in the that blew me away because by the end of this panel, you cared for her, you knew her whole story, and you were shocked by the final panel where you just were like, oh,
yeah.
So the writing of this, and now and this tells them they're not playing; they're dropping bombs on people, and this is where he steps it up. And this introduction of the Batmobile, crazy. This Batmobile, when you see this thing, you're like, it's a tank. It's crazy, and what he does, and this was fantastic. That fight, that one-on-one, because he loses the first fight, but then he comes back. And he says, I'm not going to try to outplay. I'm going to outthink him. Let me get right over the eye because that's going to start to bleed. And once that starts to bleed, he's not going to be able to see out of it. Boom, I'm going to hit him here. It's not going to hurt, but he ain't going to be able to lift his arm for a little while. That fight at the end was fantastic.
My favorite line of the whole deal.
The favorite line right there of the whole.
Right.
He says, it's an operating table and I'm the surgeon.
It's you know what? It's the first line of the whole thing that means so much. He's like, you don't get it, boy. Yeah. This isn't a mud hole. I love that.
Fantastic.
Something tells me to stop with the leg. I don't listen to it.
Yeah.
Just remember, I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me.
Exactly. Bear, that's right. You were reading this in the Baltimore airport. Man, good stuff.
Andy, what do you think of issue 2?
I wouldn't call it my favorite out of all of them, but it's up there. It definitely delivered my favorite panel out of the whole book. Batman holding a body draped in the American flag.
That's right after the explosion in the
Yep.
The lady with the purse. Yeah.
That's my favorite panel out of the entire book. What I did really like, and I made this connection, and it's just a weird connection to make. This is what, 88, 89, 1988, 1989?
Prior to that.
So the mutants are basically body modders. And I remember being a kid in the 80s and tattoos were taboo, piercings were taboo, gauges were taboo, body. So I can kind of see how this is fitting in with that 80s, late 80s, early 90s time frame where body modding was really taboo. So to make a whole group of bad guys called the mutants who were body modders, I got a chuckle out of that. I felt like it fit. It's definitely my solid second favorite book out of the whole group, though.
There's one other exchange I really love in this book. That's the president and Superman having that conversation.
Yes. I did.
The president's funny, man. He's like, medals. Yeah, people like medals. Hey, by the way, you want a medal? He's like, no, I'm good, sir.
I didn't upload the panel tonight, but there's that one point where the president's basically in a rascal that looks like a tank.
Yeah, pretty much just a full-on parody of Ronald Reagan by the time the last issue rolls
cool.
in.
Yeah.
I like it when, we'll cop out probably a little later. I like it when he's in that radiation suit. It's probably my favorite part with the president. But yeah, in this issue, I really like when the president's talking. They show a very close-up panel of the American flag, and you're like, "Who's he talking to? What's going on?" And you kind of see in that last panel, it starts to turn into Superman S. So it's like, oh, it's getting real now. Superman's getting pulled in here. Starting to already build toward that, last part. But yeah, going back to this issue, I mean, he has two big face-offs with the mutant leader. So the first one, that's where he rolls up with the tank and the junkyard, and you got Carrie Kelly's following him to the junkyard. And he pretty much just makes most of the mutants, they're so dumb and careless, they end up like firing like RPGs and grenades, and they just bounce off the tank and injure themselves.
They're dumb.
Yeah, so you can tell they're careless. They have no training, so they're a minimal threat to Batman. But unfortunately, the biggest threat to him is just his own ego and other people's brute force, which is pretty much seen in the one part where the mutant leader is the only person left standing, and he's just like in the camera of the bat tank, and he's like, "Get out of there, old man! You can't take me one-on-one." And all Batman had to do was pull one trigger. He could have been done there, but no. He's like, "I'm Batman." I don't know if we uploaded the panel or not. Maybe not. There's a splash panel where he just leaps out of the Batmobile and like basically starts swinging after that. And that doesn't go entirely well for him. That's where we kind of get to see Carrie be Robin for the first time once Bruce is all broken and his arm gets destroyed. He's on the ground. Luckily, Carrie Kelly leaps in to kind of save the day. And he returns the favor. Yeah, there it is right there. I love that panel. That may be my favorite.
Yeah, double fist. He's like, come on.
Yeah, and he's smiling too.
He's smiling.
Don't underestimate that smile.
That's cool.
So I gotta love that one. But yeah, you kind of get to see
the
first big interaction in between fights of Batman and Robin here. So Alfred's just like, "All right, thanks for loading them up. You can go now." And she gets in anyway. And then she's just like, Bruce is like, "Who are you?" She's like, "My name's Carrie Kelly. I mean Robin." And he finally just goes, "Oh, I'm Bruce." And Alfred's like, "What are you doing?" So what'd you guys think of this scene? Because it's arguably one of the most important scenes in the book.
I love it. I love the fact that he's gotten to the point where he's like, "Oh God, I'm gonna die." And the second this girl helps him pull back from that death, he's like, "Oh, I can trust her." This is like it's his last opportunity to kind of have humanity. And I think that he leaps at the opportunity for another human connection, and he trusts her because he can see that she's his only hope at this point in time.
Mm-hmm. This is in the waning moments, and like again, he's always talking about, "I'm about to black out. This is going to be the end. This would be a triumphant death. I'm okay with this." And he's thinking, "Oh, this is where Robin was. He was always there for me." And boom, there's Robin. So in his mind, he's like, "Robin, there you are. You saved the day again." Yeah, and he just accepts it.
He had this cathartic moment, which he also has another one of those moments like right after this where he strips his costume off and just goes and visits the Bat originally. So he almost had a similar moment where he's just like he's thinking about Dick Grayson. And that's when you see like a shadow of Robin, and it kind of looks like young Dick Grayson coming to the rescue. And, I think at this point, the way his mentality and mental state is, like, he's taking these things as signs of things, basically. And he's just like, if it's going to happen, it needs to happen, basically. So he's just not even, whereas like our modern day Batman, like when the other Robins got discovered, he'd be like, "No, I don't need a Robin. The last one died or the last one left. There was a reason for that. I'm not ready." And then they'd have to like work their way in. Whereas Carrie Kelly shows up and he's like, "Yep, you're the perfect Robin." Andy, what did you think of this whole sequence here?
I don't know. I was lost trying to reread it at the moment. I don't really have an answer for you.
No worries. So basically, go ahead.
There's a great comment in the chat that before I lose it, I want to bring it up and kind of address it real quick. Dave Enrique says, "Rereading this, and I still don't understand why people don't get All-Star Batman." I think All-Star Batman and Robin is phenomenal for what it is, but I think that where this went completely over the top and year one was very grounded, the middle ground story, which is All-Star Batman and Robin, is just so freaking wackadoo. It's all over the place, and that's what I love about it. Plus the Jim Lee art is just irreplaceable. But I would say that if you have an appreciation for this story, you should totally have an appreciation for All-Star Batman and Robin. It just never finished or went anywhere. So That's my take on that.
Yeah, I think a lot of the problem in that one was just marketing, to be honest.
What's Robin's name? Karen Kelly?
Carrie Kelly.
Carrie. You asked your question, and I was lost in that panel shortly thereafter where he talks about, he's like, I'm dying, but I can't die. I'm not finished yet, and you're not finished with me. That's where I got lost. Totally got sucked in and reading that panel again. Sorry.
Oh, no, like I said, it can be very confusing for the first time. Yeah, I was kind of thinking the same thing, Ledge. He's probably running so many concussions at that point. And this is before we knew everything we need to know about concussions. Like, yeah, his head's just, it's got to be all over the place. But once he kind of gets his head right, talking to the bat or whatever, he dons the second new costume, basically, of this run. It's just, he gets rid of the yellow bat and he comes out in just black and gray, basically, instead of the blue and darker blue. So I don't know. I didn't even catch that the very first time I read it as a kid. I was like, oh, there are two costumes in this. But once he gets that second costume going, that's where you start to see the calculated, methodical Batman come out, where he summons Jim Gordon. And he's like, I know you're getting ready to retire. I need you one last time. And all he does is, after the mutant leader gets thrown in jail and kills this slug of a mayor they've got going on.
Slug-o-mare.
Oh my God. I don't think we need to cover him. He just sucks. Which I think that's kind of the point of how Law got so bad. But anyway, the mayor basically gets his head ripped off by going in the cell by himself with this mutant leader. So Jim Gordon, he comes in, the mutant leader's just like, come to say hi to me. He goes, no, I came to say goodbye to you. And he just turns the lights off, opens the door, and walks off. And it's all Batman's plan. He leads them. And he has Carrie Kelly help lead all the mutants into this just area where they have this big mud pit battle. Yep. So he wants everyone involved in their gang to see this battle go down because, like I said, he's going to unleash his operating table on this guy. And when he does, maybe the best moment in this whole story of, just like I said, I was like, we got to upload this panel, the whole operating table and I'm the surgeon part. That's where he starts to earn respect and fracture the complete disrespect these guys have for Gotham City. So a great way to, just a great middle point, I think, for this whole tale. So overall, what'd you guys think, once again, of issue 2? Anything else you guys want to talk about, or should we just keep rolling into the next issue?
Seawood, to be the man, woo, you gotta beat the man, and you gotta beat the man in front of all of his men. And then they know who the man is, and that's what Batman did. He's like, he took it old school. He said, what is the one thing they're going to understand? They're going to understand pure power, and I have to show them that I'm more powerful, and they will respect it. And that totally leads into the complete plot of the second half of this whole deal.
Let's hit the next volume.
All right. So we're going to take a pause here because I need to welcome Bob World into the chat.
Bob World.
We always got to say hi to Bob, one of the greatest contributors to the Comic Corps. If you guys like that bumper at the beginning, this is the guy responsible for almost every bumper we have on the channel. So a huge shout out, as usual, to Bob World. But I also want to take this time to go ahead and plug the Hero Initiative. So, and I know we got the Great Legend in the chat here. I need to share my screen. And then we're going to go ahead and look at heroinitiative.org/merchandise. So if you guys are interested in this, I left the link down below to this exact page. So last week, we did the same thing, and pretty much all this stuff sold out by Tuesday or Wednesday. So basically what these are, it's a chat opportunity for you to make a donation to the Hero Initiative, and you can basically get in a panel of 4 or 5 people, and in that group of 5 people, you have these creators to yourself. I had the fortunate chance of hosting an IDW panel, and it was fun. I was me and 4 guys in there, and I was just, I had to facilitate the thing. And basically, I just watched as Chris Ryle from IDW had a chat with 4 other guys who made a donation to the Hero Initiative. So, for instance, if you're a huge Scott Snyder fan, you can make a $200 donation to the Hero Initiative. All you have to do is go click Add to Cart. And there's only 2 of these left, by the way, so they're almost sold out. You get a 40-minute Q&A session with Scott Snyder, and there's only 5 people total allowed in this session. So basically, it'll be Scott Snyder, the facilitator of the conference, and you and 4 people if you want to buy into it.
Wow.
So it's your opportunity to basically pick Scott Snyder's brain. If there's something you ever wanted to ask him one-on-one basically, or if you want to know, like, if you want to ask him on how he broke into comics and get his advice, you have his ear for 40 minutes. Because I know on the panel I was on, that was like a lot of those guys. They wanted to pick the ear of IDW on, you know, how they can break into comics potentially. And it is a pretty interesting opportunity with some great answers. Same thing for Ron Mars. You can make a $75 donation. Brian Azzarello, Mark Wade. If you want grading advice, you can get it with Steve Borak, who's the head of CBCS. So if you wanted to talk 5-on-1 with Steve Borak and pick his brain about how to grade, what you should get graded, you can make a $99 donation and have a 40, 50-minute chat with Steve Borak. Here's one. We all remember The Watchmen, right? $125 donation gets you an opportunity to pick the brain of artist Dave Gibbons for 40 minutes. And here's an added bonus. He typed it in the chat earlier. I have it on good authority. This is going to be hosted by the Great Legend Show.
Ooh, wow.
So not only do you get Dave Gibbons, you get to spend a little bit of time with the Great Legend as well. So.
That's cool.
How peeved is Dave Gibbons going to be when somebody buys that slot just so they can talk trash?
Right?
I might buy that slot just to troll the Great Legend.
And as usual, here's my 2 recommended. And by the way, there was one with Cliff Chang. It is already sold out, and it just went up today. So these, like I said, these are extremely limited. Artist Mike McCone and artist John McCrea. Not only do you get like a half hour with each of these guys, if you make that donation, you also get the sketch too. They will do a sketch and mail it to you. So I highly recommend this opportunity. If you're one of those guys who wants to pick the brain of an artist, this is your opportunity. So I highly recommend going to heroinitiative.org/merchandise, and it's a heck of an opportunity for you to, you know, finally get almost, it's not one-on-one time, but it's as close as you're probably ever going to get.
Man, Carson, Dave Gibbons doesn't even do conventions.
No, like, he's from across the pond. He can barely ever make it over here to the States. So
right,
you're not an opportunity.
This might be your only opportunity ever to ask Dave Gibbons a question. Like just any sort of design question about the Watchmen, any sort of question you have about the layouts, those famous 9-panel layouts that Dave Gibbons so adeptly applied to that book. Man, you can ask him these questions, and it's an opportunity like none other. I just hosted a panel with Scott Dunbier, who does the special projects for IDW. He does all their artist editions and artifact editions, and just a light conversation about how he comes across this art led into another tangent about how he was good friends with Darwin Cook, and then we got into Darwin Cook anecdotes for 15 minutes. So it was definitely I didn't pay to be there, but I felt like I was robbing people by just sitting in.
Same here
on the conversation.
Yeah, so it's a heck of an opportunity. I know it may seem a little pricey, but like I said, all the money goes to a good cause here in Initiative. In some cases, you can actually get a sketch back. And I think the IDW panel I was in, they're going to send exclusive comics to those participants that were in that panel. So you never know. They might actually just send you stuff for showing up. So it's a heck of an opportunity.
We got a great look at the variant covers for the new Jim Lee Artifact Edition.
Yeah.
Oh, man, there's so much cool stuff coming from there was some Dark Knight Return stuff in there too.
Awesome.
Nice.
All right, so that's more or less our long form commercial break for the Hero Initiative. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. We're gonna hop right back in to Dark Knight here, and we're going into part 3, Hunt the Dark Knight. So this one you kind of see. Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know if you want to hop out. You can stay if you want, JB. But I know
I didn't get to see this one. I can actually watch from the chat. I'll stay in the chat. I'll be the moderator.
Okay,
I'll watch you guys from the chat.
All right, thanks, JB.
Get out of here if you didn't read the book, JB.
No, you'll want to read this one though. Trust me, he'll get it read. But anyway, Hunt the Dark Knight. This is the one. Basically, Gordon's done his final favor for Batman. He gets the golden watch. He's out. Bring in, what is it, Yindel? I always mess up her name every time. Yindel. So Commissioner Yindel, she is pretty much, imagine young Jim Gordon, more or less female version, kind of like Carrie Kelly, Robin. You get Yindel, younger version. She's basically like the Jim Gordon, if you've read Batman Year One, also by Frank Miller, which I'll talk about that after we're completely done. She's kind of like that new, hungry commissioner who just wants the book, basically. She wants to do everything by the book. And unfortunately, who doesn't go by the book at all? Batman. So her first act doesn't even get out of Gordon's retirement ceremony. She just gets straight up there like, I'm issuing arrest for Batman. So automatically right there, Batman is a wanted fugitive. So it can't operate as smoothly as he has been in the first 2 issues. So Drew, what was your first impression of issue 3?
I like Yindel as a character. You just kind of see her optimism for the system, and you just know it's going to come crashing down on her. Just from being a Batman fan, you know that it's going to hit the fan. Not only is she not going to be able to stop Batman, but she's not going to be able to stop what Batman is going to be fighting to stop. And it's just I like her as a character, though. I think that she's a strong presence. And kind of demands respect right off the bat.
Nice. Andy, what about you?
I couldn't get over the very beginning with the swastika tattoos on the girl's chest and her behind.
Nazi nips? What's wrong?
Oh, yeah.
That is actually a pretty good title for that character. I don't know really where I sit with this, because this one was kind of a bit of a blur leading into the next episode for me. Oh, I got distracted by Superman. That's what it was. As I'm scrolling through here, I was like, oh,
there's
yeah.
Nazi nips and you got distracted by Superman?
Yeah, that kind of has to be said, too. There's this really cool scene where he's basically fighting Nazis, dressed as an old lady, which one day Ric Flair would rip off later in WCW. There's my one wrestling reference. I had to get that in. But anyway, Batman dressed up as an old bag lady fighting Nazis, and who shows up? You don't even see him. You just see his dialogue bubbles. He moves so fast and so efficiently. You see him save a blind man from a train. You see him cause earthquakes throughout Gotham just to go say hi to Batman, basically. And Batman's just like, what are you doing here? You wasted hours of my time. And then they kind of come up with a whole discussion time. They have to schedule these things, of course, because they're Batman and Superman. And you cut to this scene where Superman is wearing this goofy, it's almost like a Seinfeld blouse shirt from that one episode where he's on the Today Show.
Yeah.
And it was just like completely unbuttoned like Fabio. And he had a bald eagle pet. So what did you guys make of Superman in his kind of first full appearance and returns?
I think Frank Miller leans into the fact that Superman and Batman are very different, that Batman is the soul, Superman is the Boy Scout, and he basically makes Superman as douchey as a regular Batman reader would see. You identify with this Batman as your hero, you're gonna think that Superman is lame. So why not lean into it and make him lame?
Andy?
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly, because that's exactly how that page feels when you get to it, where he's just standing there like Fabio.
He looks like Prince Eric from The Little Mermaid.
Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, that's pretty much dead on.
I really appreciated the coloration of the thought dialogue boxes, or the dialogue boxes as well. Blue being Superman, green being Joker. When I saw the colors, I picked up right away. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I still to this day don't know how I feel about Superman in this. I feel like, especially the scene we're talking about now, like not too many people are going to open this page like they're going to look at this like, I hate this guy. Why would I ever root for this guy?
He's the heel, though.
That's the problem. He's Superman. Like just making Superman the heel. That is not the Superman I like, I guess, but I understand the role he plays. Basically, he's just, at this point, he's just a government lackey. Yeah. Is pretty much all it is. Like Reagan.
He's like, just doing my job. And Batman's like, you could be doing a whole lot better than just doing your job, dummy. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the way they look at each other.
Parody Reagan makes the quip later. He's just like, well, we don't have God on our side, but I think we got the next best thing. And it shows Superman just annihilating Russians. So, yeah, like I said, I think Jackio, what's going on, Jackio? He put it in pretty well. He says Superman basically destroys the Russian army during the issue. So he's not wrong there, at least. But Yeah, like I said, I'm just kind of torn on Superman, his portrayal in this, because I've always been a Superman fan, but he is definitely written as an antagonist for the next issue starting here. Or actually starting in the last issue. I didn't even see him.
Actively root against him. You just look at him, you're like, why has he got to be such a knob?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you spend the first 2 issues watching Batman, Bruce Wayne struggle through injuries, struggle through many different things, and then this knob just shows up and just starts handling stuff as a government lackey.
Yeah. And of course, the other huge storyline is Joker's back.
Yes.
He's been back for a minute now. He's just like, Batman, darling. So they have this like almost love between Joker to Batman. It's a weird, strange, crazy man type of love to where Joker only exists basically because Batman exists. So what did you guys think of the Joker? We didn't really talk about him yet, but they slowly start building him up in the first 2 issues. But now he's kind of to the point where he's planning his more or less attack on Gotham. He's talking to, I think it's pretty much just Toy Man at this point, because he obviously has his Raggedy Ann and Andy toys. What did you guys think of the Joker, Drew?
I love the Joker in this story. I think that he's pure chaos, and his like kind of effeminate nature sets him apart as a character in a way that makes him off-putting and weird. Not to sound homophobic, but like that's just kind of part of the deal. Is like, especially when was this to come out? What, 1986?
Yes.
Yeah, in 1986, the affection for Batman, twisted or not, the Joker shows is not something that was displayed in mainstream media, and it's definitely very, very intense and twisted. And I dig the Joker in this. I think that he's super funny. That's kind of where I like my Joker to live.
Andy?
I agree with Drew where they definitely built him up. In the very beginning, he seemed kind of meek and quiet in the asylum. And then once he's out, he's in the 90s duds with the 1-button suit with the heels on and the slacks. And just like he almost has a bigger chest than Superman in this issue.
I think it's the shoulder pads in his jacket.
That's the 80s shoulder pads. Yeah. And then he just keeps building from there. But one question I did have that was lost on me, being the first reader of this and the first reader of Batman, is what was up with the flying toddler? The toddler of nightmares. Was that, this guy?
It's one of Toy Man's toys.
Yeah, just like a Raggedy Ann and Andy dolls, except they spew venom and explode.
Okay.
Yeah, horrendous. Yeah, that's what I honestly like. I'll talk about the animated movie down the line, but it almost gave me a better perspective on those dolls versus trying to interpret and read them in the book, because I did struggle with that my first time around as well.
Well, I didn't realize that they were production pieces, that they were things that he was creating. I thought it was his little sidekick for a long while there until they started exploding in the carnival at the fair area.
Yeah, so the 2 big things that Joker does, well, there's several big things really, but the main things he does is he sets up his appearance on the David Endocrine show, not David Letterman, David Endocrine. So he goes on the Endocrine show, which I think there's like a fake Zsa Zsa Gabor there as well. And for some reason, like I said, the worst shrink in history sets this up. She's just like, all right, I want you to feel better. I need you to, and he doesn't like Batman, so he's going to put Joker out there to kind of have his sob story about why, all this pain Joker has caused is because of Batman and blah, blah, blah. Now he's cured of that. Basically what they did in White Knight, more or less. Go read White Knight if you want to see a Joker redemption story. But here, dude, he doesn't redeem anything at all. So he kind of convinces Toy Man to put these Raggedy Ann and Andy dolls together. And he goes on the show, and he kind of gets a little dark and crazy. And then he gets his Zsa Zsa Gabor clone, whatever you want to call her, and she immediately just succumbs to the Joker poison, has a big smile on her face, passes over, and dies. And then that's when Andy Raggedy Ann flies in, pretty much gasses the whole crowd. He pretty much just kills 600 people in one foul swoop. Um, so you get that scene, and then there's a part where he goes to Selena Kyle, who has her own like prostitution ring, basically. Goes there, poisons her, convinces her to give her one of the prostitutes. What is it? A senator, basically. And then he goes crazy because he's been poisoned by the Joker and says they need to bomb Russia. And obviously that goes crazy, of course. He falls off a building naked, wrapped in the American flag. So Joker's causing all this chaos in like 15 minutes. So it culminates with him going to the fairgrounds. He leaves the cotton candy at Selena's to basically tell Batman where to find him. So Batman and Robin go to the fairgrounds to fight Joker and Toyman. And that's where we get the most chaos. So, Drew, what do you think of all these actions by the Joker?
I think that probably my favorite thing of this whole story is that Selena's just like the used up old whore.
Yeah.
Like Frank has no love lost for the women in Batman's life.
Mm-mm.
No, they're Lana Lang got old and fat. So did Selena, and now she's a madam. It's not a good look for a lot of these characters, the way things ended up for them. But Joker's still on top, and he's doing a great job. You know, he's doing fantastic. Got a white suit, killing people.
Well, then
sounds like fun.
Batman finds her tied up in the Wonder Woman outfit.
Yeah.
That was pretty good. I like the part where Joker is being interviewed by his psychiatrist on the TV show, and then he ends it with basically, "I'm gonna kill everybody."
Yeah, and Endocrin's just like, he's just being rude. Don't worry about it. And then, he kills everybody.
They did that same kind of downplay with Two-Face in book 2, right? Where they had him like on the television, and didn't Two-Face kind of start losing it? And
I think Two-Face though wasn't. He was trying to be cured. I think that Two-Face wanted to be cured, whereas Joker's outlook is that there's nothing to cure him from. There's nothing wrong with him being crazy. Him being crazy is how he is.
Yeah, I think he thinks the problem is with everybody else, and that's the worst kind of insanity, basically. I said
Two-Face was looking for the light at the end of the tunnel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so of course it culminates with, basically Robin versus Toyman on the roller coaster, which that ends in a grisly affair. Unfortunately, Robin accidentally shoves him and kills him. His head basically just explodes, and she's basically left weeping by the end of this issue. But the main event here, of course, is Batman versus Joker, with, of course, cops everywhere and them trying to get involved and get in the way and stuff. But Joker kind of just goes on a crazy killing spree, killing everyone in the Tunnel of Love, holding Kid hostage in the mirror room, and eventually it's just Batman, Joker. He's stabbing the crap out of him. Batman took his eye with a batarang as soon as he took the first hostage. It's probably the most graphic this whole story gets, in my opinion, fight-wise. I know the mutant fight, that was pretty grisly, but people losing eyes here. They're getting stabbed multiple times, as you could tell on that last scene. You kind of see the sound effect of stabbing in the back of the panel. That thing is up there probably at least 6 times he stabs Batman in the midsection. So
and they're very descriptive about everything too.
Mm-hmm. So Batman, in an act of desperation, finally just snaps his neck, trying to cripple him. At this point, he doesn't feel he has a choice, but he doesn't kill him. So basically, Joker, he's paralyzed from the neck down, and he's live. He's like, I almost got you, but there's no witnesses, so I win. Batman, he just kind of, after having his last little villain monologue, he finally just adjusts his neck just enough to kill himself, making it look like Batman killed him.
It's obviously the most far-fetched part of this entire story.
But the
there's Nazi nips and Superman and he's got the Fabio shirt thing going on and an eagle on his arm. But no, the Joker snapping his own neck to kill himself is the dumbest part.
It might be dumb, but I mean the whole page watching it play
out.
Oh
no, it's great.
Yeah.
And then when he actually does it, made me want to throw up. Reality aside and how dumb it may have been, I was like, I'm like, God, he's such a chaos that he's just gonna do it.
Yeah. So that's pretty much where this issue ends, just with, going into the next issue, Batman's going to be more wanted than ever because now
because he
they
killed
think
the
he's
mass
killed.
murderer.
Yeah.
So obviously he's the real
Mhm.
bad guy.
Yeah, the way the Gotham law system has been working, it's not going to go well for Batman the next issue, because next issue's title, issue 4, The Dark Knight Falls. And of course, who's there but our favorite Superman? So going in,
douchebag.
so before we go into the Superman versus Batman, which, hey, I wore the shirt, yay! You get the fallout from Joker getting killed. Basically, Batman's trying to almost shoot his way out of there because of all the cops. He basically does, but first is the craziest thing, in my opinion, Batman does the entire story. He spits on Joker just as a final goodbye, he says, and then he rigs his body so when the cops touch it, it just goes ablaze. And then in the middle of this cop fight, he looks at the Joker, and there's almost not even another scene like this the entire time. He just goes, "Stop laughing at me!" And no one's laughing. It's just the skeleton of the Joker. So that means the Joker is now also in his head along with his bat, basically. So what did you guys think of the way this issue started?
Batman is crazy as ever, man.
Andy?
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is where I realized that these were 4 books. Is I finally caught. So this is how Comixology did it. That little itty bitty tidbit at the bottom
is the title. Yeah,
that's your title for the book. The rest of it is. So this is where 75% of the way through the read, this is where I realized that there were 4 books. Moving on. Yeah, he spit in his face. And I actually really liked, if you look closely enough, where he spits at him in his face, where it hits it in his face. By the time the cops show up, it's trailed down far enough that you realize that Batman's had enough time to put some distance between himself and the cops.
Or take all that time to rig a improvised explosive device.
Yeah, that too.
Oh, so, I thought he did it before that, but either way.
The other underlining theme, especially with all the media stuff that's going on in the book, is you see the Cold War. It's gotten really crazy, and that's where you get Ronald Reagan in the suit. He's like, "Well, Americans, I've got some good news and I've got some bad news for you. The good news is Cordo Maltese, they backed out, so they're good now. The bad news is the Russians, they're not too happy about it." And then you just cut to this missile being launched at the United States. They deploy Superman, of course, and the plan isn't to bomb anything. It turns out the plan is just to EMP pretty much the United States. So Superman acting exactly, let's just a trap the Russians have set for Superman. Superman detonates the bomb, but it knocks out all of the power, everything that has power in the U.S. So Batman, he has this monologue like, "You fool, you went right into a trap. You're an idiot. I would have saw that coming," as he's laying on, another hospital bed, because that's basically how all these issues start at this point, with Bruce in a hospital bed. So all the life support's out. Carrie Kelly's watch is out. So this is where Batman's like, "I need to act now, or else everything's just in complete chaos." So he starts by getting horses. He gets on his high horse and he goes to the dump to find all the sons of the Batman. So he recruits the sons of the Batman, who are they're just ready to go kill anyone who stands in their way. And Bruce, this is where they start to talk about this booming Batman voice, and it's through the narration of Carrie Kelly. She's just like, "I've never heard a voice like this before," or calls it godlike. I can't remember the adjective she uses, but she basically describes it as this crazy man is telling these insane people that they need to go save Gotham. And he actually, since they look up to him, they go with him. They take the horses and go into Gotham, where it's just mayhem. People are fighting each other over groceries and that stuff. There's planes falling out of the sky. Jim Gordon's smoking cigars, and they reign in Gotham. But somehow among all this, basically Batman has taken over the law in Gotham, because the commissioner, she just finally admits Batman's too big. So what did you guys think of this whole sequence of Batman kind of taking over Gotham, more or less?
Go ahead, Andy.
I really don't have any deep thoughts on this. I felt like I really, as a first-time reader, felt like the book existed to close out the death of the Joker. to give that final substance and then for him to move on and then continue his story. But I don't know. I enjoyed it quite a bit, but I just don't know where and how it really fits.
I actually really dig it. I'm a huge fan of the way that it plays out, and I think that it could really be its own mini series itself. Just martial law Batman as the old mayor of old Western Gotham town, because all the power's out, but they've got horses and they know how to put out fires. And Batman forces teamwork. He doesn't expect you to do something; he makes you do it.
Yeah.
I kind of got rereading this. I kind of got the same vibes I did when I read Secret Empire, where you had Captain America juxtaposed to his original role as, soldier and savior, but you had him as like dictator and leader. But the way that he led was still the same way that he would have acted if he was just on a different side of things. And I think that Batman here in this role, it's like he's obviously the only one who could grab control of Gotham. And it's neat to see it kind of used in this way to kind of grab control. He felt like he needed to grab control, but still he did. And whether or not he needed to, I don't believe that's up for debate. I think that Gotham would have fallen into further disrepair had it been on the shoulders of the Gotham PD and the local government. But I really dig it. I think that it shows, like, especially during that speech, the inspiration that he is to everybody, and I think it's kind of just like out of jealousy that the final straw is kind of pulled and they send Superman in to get it.
Yeah, that's probably like my one biggest quip is this next sequence, basically, because it seems like even the media, maybe it's because it's Gotham media, they're just like, everywhere in the world right now is completely out of control and chaos or close to martial law, except for Gotham City because of Batman, basically. And somehow this makes the president send Superman to Gotham one more time, and Superman shows up and using I-beams just writes "where" in the snow, and Batman kind of whispers to him, "Crime Alley." So, like I said, I kind of agree. It's a bit hypocritical. Like, there's so many other things that Superman should have been doing to help out, that, like, why is Batman their biggest problem? I guess it just, they felt like anarchy was ruling as their perspective, I guess. But basically, this triggers that final straw you were talking about and getting Superman versus Batman in Crime Alley.
I think it's also a bit of a political commentary.
Yeah.
You can tell from reading this book that Frank Miller is, there are a lot of questions I have about his political leanings, but you can tell that in 1986, he was no fan of the federal government.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, you get the final battle. I forgot to mention, though, you get some Oliver Queen action, too. Right?
That's one of my favorite parts.
He gets snuck in right before this battle, like almost out of left field. He's just like, "Hey, I'm not asking for much. I want my piece of Big Blue. A little piece will be fine with me." And you can kind of see his arm. He's missing an arm. He's just like, "Yeah, it hurts when it gets cold." And you, like, in like one, not even a full page, you kind of get told everything you need to know about this version of Oliver Queen. So right up that gate, he already has another ally he can use in this battle. So, and you can tell when this battle finally comes down, Batman has been planning this battle for decades. Like, he probably ever since he's known Batman, you could tell, like, he picked the place, he knew the armor, he knew all the weaknesses, he knew where to get power for more weaknesses by being in Crime Alley. So you get to see him basically craft, once again, Superman's on his operating table and Batman's the surgeon, basically, in this scene. But it's freaking Superman, though. So it's a little bit of luck, but a lot of planning had to go into Batman's final fight here. And pretty much, since, it's Dark Knight Returns, it goes pretty well for the most part for Batman. Up until, arguably, I don't know if that pill he took earlier, maybe it was a heart pill, maybe it was to trigger him faking his death. It probably made him fake his death. But once Oliver hit him with that kryptonite arrow, it was pretty much over from there. He got to tell him off. He's just got to go, you got to remember the man who beat you. And then he has his heart attack and dies. And then Superman tells the army, don't touch him. And he actually gets to give him an actual funeral where Selena shows up and is like cursing out for being there. And then all of his friends show up. But then the main end scene is where it's Carrie Kelly dressed in all black with a shovel and Superman. And then he starts to walk away. You see that heart tick. And he kind of looks at Carrie Kelly. They look at each other. Carrie is scared out of her mind because of Superman. And he just winks with his one good eye and walks away. So what did you guys think about this whole Superman versus Batman fight? Andy, I'll start with you.
I enjoyed it. Like you said, you could tell that he'd been preparing it for a decade or more. It didn't really connect with me at first. I liked the acid in Superman's eyes. That was great, because how else are you really going to try to blind Superman but just throw pure acid in his face? And then the kryptonite arrow was great, and I really dug that. And I really enjoy the fact that they went into another level to say that Bruce Wayne spent decades developing that. And what did he say? Millions of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars just to develop that for that one shot. That was cool. I really enjoyed that. And then the boot to the face, that one panel with that boot to the face. How often do you get to see that where Bruce Wayne, where Batman is just kicking the living snot out of Superman?
Yeah, that's probably the most iconic panel from this whole fight. What about you, Drew?
Proves what we've always known all along. Batman's better than Superman. Even an old ass, beaten down, broken down Batman has a plan for Superman's dumbass. I don't think that in main continuity it's all the same, but definitely in this book, Superman is a nozzle. He's a complete knob. Nobody likes him, and he's going to come in here and try to take out the boss when he ain't got no business. He ain't got no business coming at Batman, and Batman wins. That's what he does. He had the time, he had the prep time, he had the ideas, he had the teamwork, and he had the leadership skills to take a one-armed C-list character and some little girl who playing at Robin and beat Superman.
Yep. So basically, your last couple pages kind of show him forming a new cave, except this time he has Oliver with him, Carrie Kelly, and pretty much the sons of the Batman. And he's going to teach and train them finally. So you kind of see almost this happy version of Bruce doing what he enjoys most in life. I think that's mentoring, young kids and helping them lead them the right way. I think that's what he enjoyed most from his work, is just helping out, like Robin's like Dick Grayson and basically Jason Todd. Then he got to do the same thing with Carrie in this one. Now he's doing it with the Sons of the Batman, and he's happy, it looks like. And that's where we cut to the end of the story. So I guess my final question, since we're up to all four, everyone loves the writing of Frank Miller. What did you guys think of the art throughout this thing?
I dig it. I am one to enjoy stylized art, though, and this is definitely has its own life to it. I like Frank Miller's art in this universe. Even the really scribbly interior, what were those minis that were included in the Dark Knight 3? Kind of his C-list character explorations in the universe. I thought they were really good too. He obviously isn't what he once was. His hand's not nearly as steady, but this is probably, I think, the top of Frank Miller's art, kind of the crescendo.
Andy?
I'm not quite sure if it's like the sign of the times or just the way things were, how they were formatted or laid out. But there were times that I really felt like this was very Watchmen-esque, like very like I almost felt like they could stand side by side to each other art wise. That being said, I enjoyed it quite a bit. It was dark and it was gritty when it needed to be, but it was bright, crisp, and clear where where you wanted a lot of that detail and that facial expression.
Yeah, I completely agree with Dave Enrique. Says Lynn Varley's colors make this book art-wise. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I agree with what Drew said earlier. I think this is the strongest art showing we've ever seen from Frank Miller personally. There's a few spots where it's extremely gritty, but I think it suits the Dark Knight universe overall. And when it needs to be big and colorful and larger than life, that's when Lynn Varley's colors really come in to make it look great. So I'm not a fan of his later ones per se, especially once you get the strikes again. But I think he hit the nail right on the head in this book when it came to art duties as well. So can't say enough good things about it. So I think it's time finally to give our overall scores for The Dark Knight Returns. So Andy, what score do you give this book?
I'm going to have to go 9.4. Honestly,
Nice.
Honestly, a 9.4.
Drew?
9.6. I like this book a lot. And what it gave to the character, you can never really take away.
Yeah. I'm going to go 9.6 as well. Like I said, what kept me from 9.8 is probably just issue 4 going into that final battle with Superman. I just didn't quite believe that Superman's top priority in that situation would be, I have to go fight Superman and get my butt kicked rather than going and helping everybody else who needed help. That is the least characteristic Superman thing I've seen in this book. Other than that, the Batman side of things obviously is second to none. It probably the only thing that came close to probably matching it for me is 1 year later, which Frank Miller would write almost right after this. So definitely that's worth a read as well. So I'm going to go 9.6. So I guess the fallout from this story is pretty obvious at this point. We don't need to spend too much time talking about it, but I pretty much think once the story came out, it definitely gave him that extra oomph to make that 89 Batman movie. And I think without this story, you don't get that movie. And I think that's the movie that kind of gave a jump start to all the stuff where we've talked about it in our movie series we got here on Modern Men. But I think without that movie, a lot of these other ones don't get jump started.
Agreed.
And of course, the comic writing where they went with the character, I think it's pretty obvious that to this day they still look to Dark Knight Returns for their Batman. I mean, the top example for me is the Grant Morrison stuff in Justice League, where you see this almost Bat God in the Tower of Babel, where he's coming up with like all Dark Knight Returns. So, like I said, there's so many things that this book influenced. Heck, I was watching Dark Knight Rises the other day, and there's a scene in the first issue of this where it's the young cop and the old cop's like, hey, sit back and enjoy the show, kid. And that exact scene is in that movie. So, I mean, it's definitely like probably the most, if there's a more influential Batman story, I'd like to hear the opinions on that for sure. I mean, of course, you got this Year One Killing Joke. There's a bevy of them, but I think this is the top of the list. So, before we kind of move on to our fun randomizer activity, Andy, do you have any final thoughts or notes on Dark Knight Returns?
Not a lot. I'm glad we've done this, and I'm super thankful to be a part of this, because I probably never would have picked this up off the shelves just looking at the covers and wondering. I vaguely remember one of the covers as a kid. I kind of vaguely remember flipping through it and putting it back. But if it wasn't for Modern Men, I probably never would have read this.
Interesting. Well, that's cool. I'm glad you finally got a chance to get your nose in that book. Drew, this is probably your umpteenth time reading this. What'd you think this time?
Yeah, I love this book, and I think that this, in conjunction with Year One, are really the two Batman stories that you need as an anchor. And Frank Miller wrote them both. Killing Joke, to its credit, is a really great Joker story, not as much a great Batman story. Whereas this like Year One is where he came from. Dark Knight Returns is where he's going, and then everything else can fit in between. It's the best bread for a Batman sandwich, in my opinion. And all you got to do is watch the Batman inspired films to know that, like, everything that is the character of Batman springs from these two stories, and year one also really informs the world with Jim Gordon, the GCPD, and all the corruption that's going on in Gotham. So you're talking about two stories that really like branch together and fill in all of the gaps. I think that they're both essential reading.
Yeah. And my one last probably note about Dark Knight is if someone out there actually like wanted to read along with us and kind of had a little trouble following and was confused by some of the art and panels, I highly recommend at least checking out the animated movie.
Oh God, yes.
That they did. I think it was 2012 and 2013. For whatever reason, they decided to break it up into two parts. I think it was just a money grab basically, but they've actually released versions where they're all together into one sequential story.
It's just too long altogether, I think. Too.
And I mean, it follows this extremely close. Like the dialogue's almost identical. There's only like the couple changes they made where Gordon chews gum instead of smoking cigars because kids, even though it was PG-13, owl. And then
he's trying to quit. They kind of make that.
He's
note.
like, Sarah wants me to quit. The wife won't shut up about it. And then and then there's a lot of the head dialogue. You miss out on that by watching the movie, but a lot of it is just dialogue in the movie instead of in the head. So Joker's literally like telling Batman, like, "Oh, thanks for keeping count because I wasn't." Instead of Joker thinking that, he literally tells Batman that. So, like I said, minor differences, but it's because I actually watched the movie last night, then read the book this morning, and it's actually it's really good adaptation, I'd say.
Man, I wish you guys would share those tidbits in the chat before we get deeper into this stuff. I would have done that this morning too.
We are not giving you and JB the Cliff Notes. We just read the Cliff Notes.
All right, so I think everyone, we still got 23 watching strong. Thank you guys so much for sticking with us.
Great turnout tonight.
Yeah. So I think some people, they're just sticking around for the randomizer.
Yeah, randomizer.
With the randomizer. So once again, to kind of describe you guys, in case you're just joining us, we're bringing the randomizer returns. We had the Dark Knight returns, so we're having the randomizer returns. But I have a little extra gimmick. If we don't earn a penny, hey, that's fine too. We'll still have some fun. But nonetheless, everyone can put in the picks in the chat. Like Chris Barrett's already got Marvels. Imagine that. We're adding Marvels in. But if you wanted to buy in more picks, you can. So if you want a Marvels in there 20 times, you can put Marvels in and then give me a $19.99 super chat, which will go directly to the Hero Initiative. And I will literally copy and paste Marvels in 20 more times. So everyone can put in like a bunch of picks. But if you want the same pick in, you can super chat more picks for that one pick in, if that makes sense. So if you guys got questions, you can throw them in the chat. But I'm going to start typing, and you guys can kind of talk amongst yourselves and direct traffic here if I miss something here.
Did you get my first handful in the chat earlier today? Bone Parish Monstrous.
What is Midnight Suns?
Midnight Suns, we're not going to read that unless Barrett pays us money.
So that's been vetoed. And I said from the very beginning, there are vetoing powers.
No, I don't care if you read Midnight Suns. I'm just trolling Barrett.
I have no idea.
First trade of Vader. I would think the first trade of Vader is going to be on our vote for our Star Wars episode.
Oh, DMP just came in with a heck of a pick. Shirtless Bear Fighter.
Shirtless Bear Fighter is a good one.
How about Gideon Falls?
Okay, we'll go ahead and put Gideon Falls in.
Gideon Falls is a good one.
I was trying to avoid us putting picks in, but there's not tons coming into the chat yet.
Yeah, I mean, the people, we told the people the randomizer was back, and they're like, no, we want to vote.
This pretty much solidifies. We'll just go with the votes from now on. But hey, that's cool too. So Andy, since I don't see a flood, Ice Cream Man, DMP is killing it with picks right now.
Ice Cream Man's a good one.
So you said Monstrous. And what was the other one? Andy?
Bone Parish.
And then I'm not sure. Oh, I see Sweet Tooth. Okay.
Yeah, Sweet Tooth.
How about 4 kids walk into a bank?
Okay.
Yeah. Ooh, Dark Phoenix.
Yeah, well, we'll go with the whole. It's not modern age, but we'll go with hey, it influenced a lot of stuff now, so I'm okay with that.
Thunderhouse says Screamer, but I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that is either. Here we go. We got legend. Oh man, Chad R comes in with Punk Rock Jesus. So $20 super chat, and you guys, Drew or
That's a
Andy,
good one.
I'm gonna highlight that. I got to copy and paste that one in.
Dem's fighting words.
So I got it in once.
Sandman.
I like the Sandman.
Manhattan Project.
Whoops.
Ooh.
Get the Great Legends Before Watchmen Minutemen by Darwin Cook.
Damn it, Chad.
Yeah, Punk Rock.
Transmetropolitan.
All right, so I think I got. This is hilarious. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and there are the 20 additional spots for Punk Rock Jesus. Thank you, Chad, for the $20 super chat.
Killing Joke.
To the Hero Initiative. Yeah, let's throw Killing Joke on there.
1602.
Yeah, I think we got to get Manhattan Project Volume 1.
I'm going to fall on my chair laughing if Punk Rock Jesus does not win.
Transmetropolitan, I do like that. And
New Frontier
earlier before
New Frontier's a good one.
Minutemen.
Let's see. How about Black Badge?
I'm gonna roll with it. Let's see. I heard 1602. We'll definitely roll with that. Did I put Killing Joke in? Yes, I did. Black Orchid by Gaiman. Did I hear someone say Sandman? Yes, I did. Sandman.
Yes. So, my horse will be sick probably for that one.
Downright Nerdy Podcast is
Frontier.
1988 Catwoman.
Yeah, DMP is still a little salty. I won the vote on their show over on Bored and Annoyed for what movie they were going to watch last Saturday. And I picked Mac and Me, which is historically labeled the worst movie ever and has a complete 0 on Rotten Tomatoes. And
it's not that bad.
Chad's trying to make me get my math in today. So another $20 from Chad for us to read Killing Joke. So here we go.
That's a good pick.
Chad's been telling me for months he can't pay me. Apparently it was all a lie.
Ooh,
Wolverine, Enemy of the State. You get that one?
Old Man Logan.
Yes.
Ooh, yeah, Old Man Logan.
All right, Killing Joke is officially entered 20 more times. We'll go Old Man Logan.
Somebody super chat us for Old Man Logan because I don't got any money because I don't got a job.
I'm not putting Mac and Me in the thing. All right, we'll let it go one more. As soon as I see 1139 on my screen, we're gonna roll this dang thing.
I'll go 1140. Make it even.
We already read Planetary Thunder House. Yeah, we could put Planetary Volume 2. I haven't read one. So, oh my God, look at this. Wow. Chad has arrived. Like I said, if anyone else wants to super chat something, I'll do my best to get it in. But if not, hey, I'm good. That big thanks to Chad for those super chats. They'll be going right to the Hero Initiative. And like I said, we got till it turns 11:39 on my clock there. And I'm gonna hit I'm only gonna hit it once. I'm not changing that gimmick. You know, make sure that doesn't get picked.
You should randomize it once to switch up all those Killing Jokes and
Killing Joke wins. We're reading Killing Joke next week.
Hope it was worth it, Chad.
Killing Joke it is. All right.
Yeah.
I'm excited for that. I have not read that.
Hey, it's like 8 pages. It's really quick.
Yeah, wow. Compared to what we just read, it'll be a drop in the bucket, basically.
Right.
It's one prestige format graphic novel. It's one.
Oh, okay.
So it'll be a very quick read for us. So it should be a very easy, nice one. I'm actually really looking forward to it. So 2 weeks in a row, we're going to read some Batman. So we read the seminal classic Dark Knight Returns, which is one of the most important Batman stories. I think Chris Barrett put it perfect in the chat. We're going to read arguably the most important Joker story, Batman the Killing Joke. So
You guys will know that I cheated and watched the cartoon because it's going to have a whole lot of Batman and Batgirl bone-in jokes.
One issue, Drew. You just got to make it through one issue.
Not going to happen.
But big thanks for everyone for participating in our fun randomizer experiment. Huge thanks to Chad for dropping $40 and making me count all those extra times. So it was probably DNP's one pick that, no, I'm just kidding. I always got to mess with Chad. But nonetheless, huge thanks to Chad R for dropping $40 in super chats. You are the man. But beyond that, oh yeah, we never even talked about what we're going to talk about next week. So our show came to fruition. Actually, we did, but I'm going to plug it one more time. So I'm going to read Killing Joke next week, and we're going to talk about the best books we have never read. So definitely going to be an interesting show next week. So look at those lists. Look at those top 10 best ever lists on the web. Isolate those items you haven't read and talk about if you ever want to read them. So we're going to have some fun next week. But other than that, we're going to go over the chat one more time, and then we're going to go into last shout-outs and wrap this show up because we're an hour and 41 minutes of fun. Thunderhouse, thank you for coming out tonight. Kenneth Bird, huge shout-out to Downright Nerdy Podcast. Always like seeing him in the chat as usual. Huge shout-out. Had an awesome podcast yesterday. Check it out. Huge shout-out to the Great Legend Show. One of my big inspirations in the community is Great Legend. Dave Enrique, Gore Vidal dropping some phenomenal knowledge in the chat tonight. Of course, Chris Barrett, he's in every chat we do. Huge thanks for that. Chat R, man, what else can we say, man? Awesome. And then hopefully I got everybody. So, yeah, I think we're good with that. So, Comic Man Andy, where can people find you?
Oh, boy. Every Monday night, you guys can find me here doing Modern Men, learning a lot of new things, reading a lot of things I haven't read before. And then every Thursday now, you guys can find me hosting a panel of friends or whatever information I can dig my claws into for a fun time to just geek out. And you guys can find me on my own channel where I do some unboxings and I do some hangouts, whatever comes to my mind. And you guys can find me on the Pinkies Out podcast.
Awesome. Drew?
Every single day of the Comic Core, 1:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can find me. If you don't find me, I'll find you. So either way, we're going to have a good time. Either way.
Darling.
Either way.
Darling.
Anyway, you can find me. I did like this is the third thing I've recorded today, actually. I was on Bub's No Faces chat earlier today, so shout out to Bub's Comics here on YouTube. Got a chance to finally be on the No Faces chat show, so check that out on the rewind if you missed it earlier this evening. I just recorded episode 2 of Comics of the Atom with my friend Mike Green. That should be up on iTunes at some point this week, hopefully by tomorrow. So go back, listen to the first episode on the rewind. And episode 2 very soon, if not already. And of course, Comic Core will be going live April 25th. Actually, now we're doing the kickoff show on April 24th, 5 p.m. Eastern. So we will be hyping up Mainframe Comic Con going in to April 25th and April 26th. So all day here on the Comic Core, catch those favorite celebrities, all that good stuff. And then, of course, Seawater 19 is my YouTube, my Instagram. Search for it. I'll be going Tuesday night live stream tomorrow, and I'm also kicking around, maybe debuting it this week. I'm going to start reviewing IDW Turtles one volume at a time. Probably Turtle Thursdays, so I think I'm going to do live stream Tuesdays, Turtle Thursdays. So I'm going to try to get that going tomorrow too and record that. So that's where you can find me. My last plug of the night, I promise. May the 4th, episode 30, Star Wars, 10 p.m. Eastern. Start thinking about those Star Wars reads because that's going to be on the poll next week, even though we don't do the randomizer anymore after today. But I'm up for suggestions because my Star Wars, I only read a few of them. So I'm looking forward to seeing if anyone has any ideas. Leave them in the comments below. I may throw them on the poll, but May the 4th will be with us 2 weeks from today. Can't wait for that. And until next time,
fuck Sting.